Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. In this video, we're about to explore a powerful and timeless prophecy passed down through generations of Hopi elders. The Hopi teachings, deeply rooted in respect for nature and spirituality, offer profound insights into the challenges humanity faces today and the lessons we can learn from the past. We'll be diving into the story of the arrival of white-skinned men, a sign of great change in the Hopi prophecies, and the powerful messages it holds for us in the modern world. From displacement and cultural transformation to a deeper connection with the earth, these ancient prophecies continue to resonate as we confront environmental crises and social challenges in our own time. So, whether you're here to learn more about the Hopi way of life, to reflect on history, or to seek guidance for the future, we welcome you. Let's embark on this journey together as we honor the wisdom of the Hopi and explore the road ahead. The Hopi people, renowned for their spiritual teachings and prophecies, envisioned the arrival of white-skinned men as one of the pivotal signs signaling the end of the Fourth World. This prophecy foretold the colonization of the Americas, a process that profoundly altered indigenous cultures, lands, and lifeways. It serves not only as a historical account of past injustices, but also as a moral guide for humanity to learn from these events and restore balance. The Hopi prophecy, one of the most prominent and widely discussed indigenous prophecies, warned of the arrival of white-skinned men who would come from the east, bringing a deep spiritual imbalance to the earth and its inhabitants. According to the Hopi, these newcomers would lack a connection to the land and would come to disrupt the sacred balance that indigenous peoples, like the Hopi, had maintained with the earth for millennia. This disturbance would not only be physical but spiritual, leading to a host of challenges, including environmental destruction, social upheaval, and the erasure of cultures and traditions. The arrival of Europeans in the late 15th century, as foreseen in the prophecy, marked the beginning of a painful period for native peoples across the Americas. Colonization did not merely involve the displacement of people and the imposition of foreign governance systems. It was seen as a spiritual violation of the land itself. Indigenous peoples, like the Hopi, held the belief that their connection to the earth was sacred, that the land was alive and imbued with spirit. This bond was foundational to their worldview and daily life. However, the European colonizers, often motivated by an ethos of exploitation and resource extraction, lacked this same reverence for the land. Instead of viewing the earth as a living entity to be cared for and respected, the Europeans saw it as a resource to be mined and exploited for profit. The introduction of European systems of agriculture, industry, and capitalism often disregarded the principles of sustainability and harmony with nature that had governed indigenous ways of life. In their quest for gold, land, and power, Europeans disregarded the symbiotic relationship that native peoples had cultivated with the earth, leading to widespread ecological degradation. Forests were cleared, rivers were polluted, and species were driven to extinction, all consequences of the invasive mindset that sought to dominate, rather than coexist with, the natural world. Alongside the environmental damage came the social upheaval. Colonization brought diseases, warfare, and displacement, leading to the decimation of native populations. The Hopi, along with other indigenous groups, witnessed the destruction of their societies and cultures as foreign systems of governance were imposed upon them. Traditional leadership structures were replaced by European models, and the spiritual practices that had once sustained these communities were often outlawed or suppressed. Missionary efforts sought to convert native peoples to Christianity, erasing centuries of indigenous spiritual traditions and worldview in favor of a foreign religion that was alien to the land. The cultural erasure that followed European colonization was devastating. For the Hopi and many other indigenous groups, the destruction of sacred sites, the loss of language, and the dismantling of traditional ceremonies were painful reminders of the prophecy's warnings. The Hopi, in particular, had emphasized the importance of maintaining the sacred balance with the earth through their ceremonies and beliefs. But the colonial forces threatened to strip away this spiritual connection, leaving them to grapple with a profound sense of loss. The prophecy warned that these challenges would not be without consequences. Environmental destruction, social upheaval, and cultural erasure would lead to a spiritual imbalance, not only for native peoples but for the entire world. The Hopi believed that this imbalance would reach a critical point, leading to a time of reckoning, a time when humanity would be forced to confront the consequences of its actions and the damage caused by the disruption of sacred relationships with the land. In the modern era, many see the prophecy as a continuing warning. Environmental degradation, climate change, and the ongoing struggles of indigenous peoples are seen as signs that the prophecy's predictions have not yet been fully realized. As the world faces unprecedented challenges, the Hopi message remains a call for a return to balance both with the earth and with one another, a call to honor the spiritual connection that indigenous peoples have always maintained with the land. European settlers brought with them a radically different view of land, one that saw it primarily as a commodity to be claimed, owned, and exploited for profit. This materialistic perspective was fundamentally at odds with indigenous worldviews, where land was seen as sacred, living, and interconnected with the spiritual and cultural practices of the people. For the Hopi and many other native peoples, the earth was not merely a resource to be used, but a living entity to be respected and cared for, integral to their identity and way of life. This profound spiritual connection to the land was a cornerstone of their cosmology and governance systems. In contrast, the European settlers approached land with a mindset shaped by private ownership, extraction, and expansion. The notion of land as something to be owned and tamed clashed with indigenous views, where land was communal and understood to belong to the earth itself. For indigenous peoples, the earth was part of a larger, interconnected system of life, where balance and reciprocity governed human interactions with the environment. They saw themselves as stewards, guardians, and caretakers of the land, a responsibility passed down through generations. However, the arrival of European colonizers disrupted this sacred relationship. As settlers expanded westward, they forcibly took over native lands, carving out territories and establishing private property in a process that would continue for centuries. This was not only a physical seizure of land, but a spiritual rupture. The displacement of indigenous peoples from their ancestral lands severed their deep-rooted connection to the earth, which was tied to both their identity and their spiritual practices. For the Hopi, this disconnection was especially profound. Their ceremonies, rituals, and agricultural practices were all intimately linked to the land itself. The Hopi people believe that their spiritual well-being is directly tied to the land and the natural forces that govern it. Their ceremonies, often performed at sacred sites on their traditional homelands, are meant to maintain harmony between the earth and the heavens. These spiritual practices, which include prayers for rain and harvest, as well as rituals to honor the cycles of nature, could not be separated from the land they had lived on for centuries. To be forcibly removed from their ancestral territories was to lose access to the very places that held their sacred history and traditions. The forcible removal of native peoples was carried out through a variety of means, including treaties, wars, and policies such as the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This law led to the mass relocation of thousands of indigenous people from their ancestral lands in the southeastern United States to reservations in the West. For the Hopi and other tribes, this was not just a relocation but a violent disruption of their way of life. Their ceremonies and agricultural practices, which depended on specific lands and locations, were uprooted, and entire communities were torn apart. The psychological and spiritual toll of being displaced from the land was immense, as it severed the bonds that had sustained their communities for generations. The disruption of traditional governance systems was another significant consequence of displacement. Hopi governance, like many indigenous systems, was closely tied to the land and the spiritual teachings of their ancestors. Colonization imposed foreign systems of government, often undermining the traditional leadership structures that had maintained social order and communal life. In many cases, European settlers sought to replace or disregard indigenous systems altogether, further eroding the cultural and spiritual fabric of native societies. The forced removal of indigenous peoples from their lands not only caused immense trauma but also set in motion a process of cultural erosion. Without access to their homelands, many communities were forced to abandon or alter their traditional practices. For the Hopi, the loss of sacred ceremonial sites and agricultural lands was a profound rupture in their way of life, leaving them to adapt in ways that could never fully replicate their spiritual connection to the land. Despite these immense challenges, however, the Hopi and other indigenous peoples continue to fight for the recognition of their rights to their ancestral lands and for the preservation of their cultural practices, which remain intimately tied to the land they hold sacred. Colonization brought with it not only physical displacement but also efforts to suppress indigenous cultures, languages, and spiritual practices. One of the most damaging strategies was the establishment of boarding schools for Native children. These institutions were designed to forcibly assimilate indigenous children into European American culture, often through harsh and punitive measures. Children were prohibited from speaking their native languages, practicing their spiritual traditions, or maintaining any connection to their cultural heritage. The result was a significant loss of cultural continuity, as children were separated from their families and communities, with many forgetting or being discouraged from passing down their traditions. The Hopi, like many other indigenous groups, were not immune to these assimilation efforts. Their sacred ceremonies and spiritual practices were actively discouraged, and in some cases, outright banned by US authorities. Additionally, attempts were made to undermine their traditional governance systems, which were grounded in community-based decision-making and spiritual guidance. Despite these efforts, the Hopi resisted assimilation, finding ways to preserve their cultural identity and spiritual practices. They kept their ceremonial traditions alive, passing down teachings and prophecies that offered both guidance and resilience in the face of adversity. This preservation of culture and spirituality became a source of strength, helping the Hopi to maintain their identity throughout centuries of colonization. The Hopi prophecy's emphasis on the spiritual disconnection of the white-skinned newcomers underscores a fundamental clash of worldviews between indigenous peoples and European settlers. For the Hopi, and many other indigenous cultures, humanity is seen as an integral part of the natural world, with deep spiritual ties to the land. The earth is viewed as sacred, and maintaining harmony with it is central to survival. In contrast, settlers viewed nature as a resource to be dominated, controlled, and exploited for material gain. This difference in perspective laid the groundwork for practices such as deforestation, mining, and industrial agriculture, all of which disrupted ecosystems, degraded the environment, and caused long-lasting harm to the planet. The Hopi believe that this disconnection from the sacred nature of the earth didn't only harm the environment, it created a profound spiritual imbalance. According to Hopi teachings, this imbalance has manifested in the form of climate change, natural disasters, and societal conflicts. These events, they warn, are a reflection of humanity's failure to live in balance with nature. The earth, when disrespected, responds with catastrophic consequences. The Hopi stress that the continued disregard for the earth's sacredness threatens not only the environment but humanity itself. Today, the Hopi view the modern world's reliance on unsustainable practices, such as fossil fuel extraction, industrial agriculture, and rampant consumerism, as an extension of the same destructive mindset that fueled colonization. The pattern of exploitation and spiritual disconnection, they warn, continues to reverberate across generations. The prophecy serves as a cautionary tale, urging humanity to restore balance, renew respect for the earth, and embrace sustainable practices before it's too late. The Hopi prophecy, though rooted in a history of suffering and upheaval, offers profound lessons that can guide humanity toward a more harmonious future. These teachings are not just warnings about the consequences of spiritual disconnection and exploitation, but also invitations to correct the course of history and heal the earth. The prophecy outlines several key principles that, if embraced, could help restore balance and foster a more sustainable and compassionate world. A central tenet of the Hopi prophecy is the respect for all cultures and ways of life. The arrival of white-skinned men during the period of colonization sought to erase indigenous cultures and impose foreign systems of governance and belief. Despite this, the resilience of indigenous peoples, including the Hopi, has ensured the survival of their languages, knowledge systems, and traditions. The prophecy emphasizes that recognizing and valuing diverse perspectives, especially those rooted in indigenous knowledge, can be crucial in addressing global challenges today. Indigenous peoples have long practiced sustainable environmental stewardship and developed deep insights into living in harmony with nature. By learning from these wisdom traditions, modern societies can integrate alternative solutions to the ecological crises they face, such as climate change and resource depletion. Valuing cultural diversity, not only as a matter of equity but also as a source of wisdom, is an essential step in restoring balance to the world. Another vital lesson from the Hopi prophecy is the importance of environmental stewardship. The prophecy highlights the destructive effects of a worldview that treats the earth as a commodity rather than a living, sacred being. Modern environmental crises, such as climate change, deforestation, and the rapid loss of biodiversity, are stark reminders of the consequences of neglecting this sacred bond between humanity and the land. The Hopi teach that the earth must be cared for, as it sustains life and provides the resources needed for survival. This stewardship extends beyond environmental conservation to a spiritual responsibility to honor the earth. If humanity embraces the Hopi view that the earth is a living being with which we share a deep connection, it can inspire more sustainable practices that respect the earth's limits and preserve its resources for future generations. Practicing environmental stewardship in everyday life through conservation, reducing waste, and supporting sustainable agriculture can help mitigate the harm done over centuries of exploitation. The Hopi worldview teaches that the earth is not simply a resource to be extracted, but a source of life and spiritual inspiration. The prophecy calls for a restoration of the spiritual connection that many indigenous peoples, including the Hopi, have maintained with their lands. This connection is not merely physical but spiritual, with rituals, ceremonies, and teachings that honor the earth's sacredness. Reviving this connection can foster a deeper understanding of our responsibility to the land and its ecosystems. In today's world, where urbanization and technology have distanced many people from the natural world, re-establishing this spiritual awareness is essential. It involves not only recognizing the earth's value, but also cultivating a sense of gratitude, humility, and reverence for its abundance. By engaging with nature in a mindful and spiritual way, people can develop a stronger sense of responsibility for protecting it. The Hopi prophecy also emphasizes the importance of unity and collective action. The destructive forces of colonization fractured communities, creating divisions among peoples and cultures. However, the prophecy calls for a return to unity, where cooperation, mutual support, and shared responsibility are at the heart of human relations. Addressing the global challenges of the 21st century, whether they involve climate change, inequality, or social justice, requires collective action from all people, irrespective of their backgrounds. The Hopi teachings encourage working together to build a future based on compassion, respect, and mutual understanding. This vision calls for overcoming divisions, whether they are based on race, nationality, or ideology, and fostering a spirit of solidarity that transcends individual differences. Collective action not only strengthens communities, but also enables people to tackle systemic issues that cannot be solved by any one group alone. Despite the immense challenges brought by colonization, the Hopi have remained steadfast in preserving their traditions and spiritual teachings. Their resilience is a powerful testament to the enduring strength of indigenous knowledge and culture, which has been passed down through generations. Hopi elders continue to share their wisdom, stressing the importance of living simply, sustainably, and in harmony with the earth. These teachings are not just historical, but continue to guide the community in the present day. Central to Hopi life are their ceremonies, which remain vital expressions of their deep spiritual connection to the land. The annual planting of crops, for example, is not merely an agricultural practice, but a sacred ritual that honors the earth's gifts and seeks blessings for a successful harvest. The Kachena dances, performed to honor the spirit beings who bring rain and fertility, are also crucial to their spiritual and cultural identity. These dances connect the Hopi with the forces of nature, reinforcing their sense of responsibility as caretakers of the land. Through these practices, the Hopi maintain a living connection to their ancestral knowledge. They serve as reminders of the values of balance, gratitude, and humility, offering powerful lessons on how to live in respectful harmony with the earth. The arrival of white-skinned men, as described in the Hopi prophecy, stands as a powerful symbol of historical injustice, spiritual imbalance, and the profound disruptions caused by colonization. This prophecy not only recounts the trauma and displacement of indigenous peoples, but also offers a timeless call to action for contemporary society. The challenges humanity faces today, environmental degradation, social inequality, and cultural erasure, are modern echoes of the past. These issues reflect the same patterns of exploitation, disrespect for the land, and disregard for the sacredness of life that were introduced with colonization. By turning to the Hopi teachings, we can find valuable lessons for healing these wounds and creating a more harmonious future. The Hopi emphasize respect for diversity, environmental stewardship, and spiritual connection to the land. By adopting these principles, society can begin to address the root causes of our global crises. Embracing sustainable practices, valuing indigenous knowledge, and recognizing the sacredness of the earth are essential steps toward restoring balance and fostering social equity. The prophecy reminds us that true healing requires both reflection and action. By learning from the past and applying the wisdom of the Hopi, we can move toward a future where humanity lives in balance with the earth and each other, restoring harmony and justice for all. The Hopi prophecy of the arrival of white-skinned men offers profound insights into the consequences of disconnection from the sacred and the earth. While it recounts a painful history of colonization and displacement, it also provides a path forward. By embracing the lessons of respect, unity, and environmental stewardship, humanity can strive to restore balance and honor the wisdom of the earth and its indigenous caretakers. As the Hopi elders remind us, the choices we make today will shape the world of tomorrow. By heeding their teachings, we can create a future rooted in harmony, justice, and reverence for all life. Thank you so much for watching and for taking the time to explore the profound teachings of the Hopi prophecies with us. The wisdom passed down through generations of Hopi elders offers us valuable insights into how we can navigate the challenges of our time and work toward a more harmonious future. As we reflect on the lessons of respect for the earth, unity, and spiritual balance, let's remember that we all have a role to play in shaping the world we live in. The choices we make today can help restore the harmony that was once deeply embedded in the way we lived with nature and each other. We hope you found inspiration and understanding in this journey, and that it encourages you to connect more deeply with the world around you. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content on spiritual teachings, indigenous wisdom, and the path to a better tomorrow. Thank you again for being here, and may we all continue to walk in balance, peace, and respect for all life.